Some truths refuse to stay buried. They rise to the skin, line by line, where no lie survives and nothing stays hidden. The only cure is to be seen all the way down. This story unfolds now. The owl came at the hour when St. Mungo's went quiet enough to hear itself breathe. That hour past midnight, when the day healers had gone home, and the night corridors filled with the low hum of warming charms and the distant clink of potion phials cooling on a trolley. Hermione Granger was 3 years into the work and still found the building loudest when it was emptiest. The silence here had a texture, the tooth of old parchment dragged under a fingertip, and it set her on edge in a way the wards on the violent floor never did. She was halfway through a stack of discharge notes when the duty matron pushed through the door without knocking. "They want you on the 4th floor, the locked room." "I'm off in 20 minutes." "They want you." The matron's mouth thinned. She was a heavy-set woman who had stitched men back together through 2 wars and rarely wasted words. "Spell damage, curse scarring, except it isn't behaving like any scarring on the books. Healer Avis has been at it since 9, and he says the patient won't let anyone pass the curtain, and the magic." She stopped, as if the next word had a taste she disliked. "The magic keeps pushing the readers back out. It only stilled once tonight, when your name was on the file." The quill in Hermione's hand went still against the parchment, a faint scratch cut off mid-letter. "My name," she said. "On the intake, someone listed you as next of kin contact for the family years back. Don't ask me why." The matron held the door. "He's asking for nobody, but the curse asked for you." She did not say his name. She did not have to. There was only one family in Britain who would have a Granger listed anywhere near their affairs by some clerical accident of the war trials. And only one of them left who could be lying behind a locked curtain at St. Mungo's at 1 in the morning with magic crawling across him that no one could read. Hermione set down the quill. Her hand was perfectly steady. She made it so. The 4th floor room had been cleared of everything but a bed and a single oil lamp turned low because the brighter charm lights made the patient's skin react. Healer Avis met her at the door, sweat darkening the collar of his robes, the particular grey under his eyes that came of fighting magic that fought back. "Granger, thank Merlin." He pulled her into the antechamber and lowered his voice as though the walls were listening. "I've never seen anything like it. It started as scar revision, old Sectum Sempra wounds across the chest, sealed years ago, gone septic with dark residue. Standard, ugly, manageable. Except when I opened the field to read the residue, it didn't bleed. It wrote. Words, on the skin, in his own hand." Avis swallowed. A line surfaced while I watched, words I'd no business reading. And the moment I read them, the moment I understood, the rest of it went still, just for a breath, like it was satisfied. Then it sank. The line dropped under the surface and started moving inward. He pressed 2 fingers to his own sternum, unconsciously, the way men do when they speak of a wound on someone else. Toward the heart, the unread ones burrow. I've got him stable, but every hour another line comes up, and I cannot read fast enough, and the curse keeps throwing me out of the field whenever I react, wince, judge. It knows. It will not be witnessed by a liar. static gathered along the back of Hermione's neck, the prickle of a hex still hanging in air. And it settled when it saw my name. It settled, Avis said quietly, when he heard your name. Whether that's him or the magic, I can't tell you. I'm not sure he can either. She went in. The curtain was drawn around the bed in a half circle, and the oil lamp threw its light up through the cloth, so the whole enclosure glowed the colour of weak tea. He lay propped against the pillows with the sheet drawn to his waist and his arms bare, and for a moment she did not recognise the man under the words. Draco Malfoy had thinned to something carved. The arrogance she remembered had been a kind of upholstery. Without it, the bones of him stood close to the surface, the jaw too sharp, the collarbones casting their own small shadows. And across his chest, his ribs, the insides of his forearms, the skin was written. Fine dark lines of script rising and sinking like text seen through moving water. Here a phrase setting hard into silver scar. There a fresh sentence still wet-looking, lifting into legibility before her eyes. His own handwriting. She knew it from a dozen school years of essays she'd been forced to grade against in her own mind. The same cramped, aristocratic slant, gone shaky now. He had his eyes shut. He did not open them. They scent the mudblood, he said. The word came out flat, exhausted, with none of the old venom. A reflex fired off out of habit, because the alternative was silence, and silence with her in the room was apparently more than he could bear. A muscle moved in Hermione's jaw. She let it. She did not arrange her face into anything. They sent a curse breaker, she said. You're fortunate the two professions overlap in exactly one person tonight. His eyes opened then, grey and frighteningly clear, the way fever sometimes scoured a person down to honesty. They found her, held, and something in them flinched. Not at her, she realised, but at being looked at all, here, like this. Get out, he said. No. Granger. His hand moved on the sheet, knuckles whitening where he fisted the fabric. You don't know what it's doing. You don't know what it's going to make you read. Then tell me. I would rather it killed me. He said it without drama, which was what made it land. A man stating a preference. I have read 3 of these tonight. Do you understand? I have lain here and watched my own hand spell out things across my body that I have never said to a living soul, that I would not say under veritaserum, that I took every precaution in my life to ensure no one would ever. His breath caught. The lamp flame leaned. On his forearm a new line was surfacing, and his free hand clapped flat over it before she could see, pressing down as if he could push it back under. And the magic does not care what I want. It is going to lay me open in front of you, line by line, and you are going to read it, and I will have to lie here while you do. The atmospheric pressure in the small enclosure had changed. She could feel the curse the way you feel a storm 2 valleys off, a tightening behind the eyes, a faint metallic edge to the air, ozone, like the breath after a hex has been thrown and not yet answered. That's why it pushes the others out, she said slowly, understanding arriving the way it did when she stopped fighting a problem and let it move toward her. It won't be read by someone who pulls back. Avis winced. You watched him wince. The magic felt it and threw him. It wants a true witness, Draco said, and laughed, a dreadful, soundless thing. And the universe, in its endless humour, has decided the only person in Britain too stubborn to look away from anything is you. She came closer. He tensed all over, every written line on him seeming to draw tight. But he did not tell her to stop again. "Show me your arm," she said. "No." "Malfoy, the line you're hiding is moving inward while we argue. I can feel it from here." She kept her voice level, the voice she used on patients who were certain they were about to die and were sometimes right. "I am not going to wince. I am not going to judge you. Not because I've forgiven you. I haven't. I don't know that I can. But because I am very, very good at reading things I do not like and not letting my face show it. I have had practice." Something crossed her own features then, gone before it fully formed. "You taught me some of that practice. You and yours." He looked at her for a long moment. Outside the curtain, the building breathed its low, warming charm hum, and somewhere far down the corridor, footsteps went hollow and faded. Then, slowly, like a man laying down a weapon he has carried so long it has fused to his hand, Draco Malfoy lifted his palm off his forearm and turned the inside of it toward the lamp. The script was small and surfacing still, the letters firming as she bent to read. His handwriting at perhaps 16, younger, the slant less broken. She read it once silently. Then, because Avis had said the curse needed witnessing and not merely seeing, because some instinct told her the magic listened, she read it aloud, her voice low and steady in the tea-coloured light. "The night they marked me, I wept in the bathroom afterward and was ashamed of the weeping, not the mark." The words seemed to flex under her gaze. She did not flinch. She held his arm and held the line in her attention and made herself a true mirror. No recoil, no softening into pity, only the flat, clean fact of, "I see this and I am not turning away." And the script trembled and stilled and then sank, not inward toward the heart, but settling, the dark ink draining to fine silver, a scar set and harmless and closed. Draco made a sound she had never heard from him in 7 years of knowing him. A breath let go that had been held, she suspected, since long before tonight. His eyes were wet. He turned his face away so she would not see. The old reflex and the motion bared the long line of his throat, where a fresh sentence was already rising, dark and legible, beginning with the words, "I never told my mother that," and his hand came up to cover his eyes, and Hermione found that she had not let go of his arm. She did not let go of his arm, and he did not pull it back, and for a span of time neither of them could have measured, they simply remained. Her fingers around his wrist, where the pulse ran fast and shallow under the skin, his other hand pressed flat over his eyes as though he could blind himself to being seen. The lamps guttered and steadied. The fresh sentence at his throat went on rising, the letters firming one by one. "Malfoy, don't." His voice came muffled from behind his hand. "Don't read that one. Not yet. Give me a breath. Give me a moment that I am not being excavated." She could have argued that the line at his throat was already moving, that every hesitation cost him, that the magic did not grant moments. She did not. She let the silence sit between them, and she watched the sentence at his throat lift fully clear of the skin, and then, finding no reader, begin its slow turn inward, the ink darkening, the letters seeming to press down rather than out, as if a hand on the far side of his flesh were drawing them toward the heart. "It's moving," she said quietly. Not an argument, a fact laid on the table for him to do with as he chose. His hand came away from his eyes. He looked at the ceiling, jaw working, and when he spoke, it was with the flat precision of a man reading his own death warrant aloud to prove he could. "Then read it, since apparently I am to have no part of myself that stays mine." She bent to his throat. This close, she could smell the sickness on him under the sharp green reek of the dittany they'd packed the original wounds with. A thin, feverish scent. And beneath it, something that was simply him, warm skin, and the faint metal of old fear. The sentence had set itself just below the angle of his jaw, where the pulse beat hardest. She read it silently first. Her own breath snagged. She did not let the snag reach her face. "I never told my mother that I knew she lied to the Dark Lord to save me, because if I had thanked her, she would have had to admit how close she came to losing me, and I could not do that to her." The line shuddered, stilled, drained to silver, and faded. A long quiet. Then Draco said to the ceiling, in a voice scraped down to nothing, "She doesn't know that I knew." "She does now," Hermione said. "I'm in the room." He shut his eyes. But the line of his mouth had changed. Some unbearable pressure behind it eased a fraction, the way a fist held two long aches when it finally opens. "That's how it works then," she went on, because the curse breaker in her could not stop building the map, even when the woman in her wanted to look away. "A truth you hid surfaces. It needs a witness, someone who reads it and holds it without recoiling. Witnessed, it sets and goes harmless. Unwitnessed, it burrows. The deeper the truth, the deeper it goes, and the deepest ones. Reach the heart," he finished. "Avis told you." "He told me they'd kill you. He didn't tell me how it chooses what to surface." Chronologically. Draco's eyes opened. In the tea-coloured light, they had gone the grey of slate under rain. "It started the night before last, with small things, school things, pettiness I'd buried. It is working its way forward, year by year." He swallowed, and she watched the words, "I am afraid of," what year it is climbing toward, go across his face without his ever speaking them, because his hand had found the edge of the sheet and was twisting it, the knuckles standing white. She understood. The war years lay ahead of them on the calendar of his skin. The manor lay ahead. She straightened. She had been bent over him for the better part of an hour, and her back had set into one long ache. But the ache was a small, clean thing she could feel honestly, and she was glad of it. "I'm going to set up properly," she said, in the brisk register that put a wall between the work and the dread of the work. "If we're doing this for days, I won't do it folded over a bed like a washerwoman. And you'll eat something, because the magic is feeding on you to power itself, and you've nothing left to give it." "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask." She crossed to the antechamber and spoke low to Avis, who hovered there grey and useless with exhaustion, and sent him for broth, and for a proper healer's chair, and for the heavy curse scribe's lens she kept in her own locker. When she came back through the curtain, Draco had pushed himself more upright against the pillows, and the movement had dragged the sheet down, and across the whole broad plane of his chest she saw for the first time the full extent of it. She had thought, in the dimness, that the writing was confined to forearms and throat. It was not. The original Sectum Sempra scars ran in 3 long diagonal seams from shoulder to hip. The old silver ropes of them she remembered from the testimony at the trials. And out of those seams the new script poured, fed by them, branching across his ribs and his sternum in lines and lines and lines, most of it set silver and old, some of it dark and waiting. A man written over entirely, a palimpsest of a person. She stopped. For one unguarded second, something moved across her face that she did not catch in time. Not disgust, not pity. He was watching for both, braced for both, and got neither. And the thing that did cross her face was so much worse to him, because it was recognition, the look of one marked person seeing another. "Don't," he said sharply. "I didn't say anything." "You don't have to. You've got a—" His hand made a small, violent gesture toward her own left forearm, where under the sleeve of her healer's robe the word mudblood had sat in pale raised script for 3 years. Bellatrix's penmanship, his aunt's knife. "I know what's under there, Granger. The whole world knows, and I will not be understood by you. Pitied, judged, hated? Fine. Earned. But not that." The static rose between them again, sharp and electric, and for a moment they were not healer and patient at all, but the 2 children who had loathed each other across a classroom, the loathing now grown into something with far more surface area. "You think I want to understand you," she said very quietly. "I don't. I would have been perfectly content to go the rest of my life without knowing a single true thing about you. The curse decided otherwise. I am a healer, and you are dying, and I am the only person the magic will permit to keep you alive, and I would do this for any patient in that bed, including ones I despise." She held his gaze. "Don't mistake the obligation for tenderness. You'll embarrass us both. It was cruel, and it was meant to be, because cruelty was a coin he understood and could spend back, and it was the only currency that would let him keep his footing." She watched it land and watched it work, watched the panic drain out of him as the familiar architecture of Granger despises me resettled into place, solid, load-bearing, something he could stand on. "Good," he said, "as long as we understand each other." "We don't. That's the point." Avis came back with the broth and the chair and the lens. Hermione settled the heavy carved seat beside the bed, hung the curse scribe's lens on its chain from the bed rail, where it caught the lamplight and threw a coin of brightness across the written skin, and set the bowl on the side table. "Eat." He looked at the broth as though it were an accusation. Then, because refusing would have cost more dignity than complying, he took it, and his hand shook badly enough that the spoon chimed against the rim, and he set the spoon down and lifted the whole bowl in both hands and drank from it instead, and pretended he had meant to do that all along. She pretended not to notice. It was, she thought, the first kind thing she had done for him, and she resented it. They worked through the small hours. A line would surface. She learned to feel them coming now, a tightening in the air a few seconds before the skin gave up its secret, the faint ozone bite of magic moving. She would find it with the lens, read it silently to school her face, then read it aloud into the hush. Most were small, the cruelties of a frightened boy. I broke Pansy's confidence to make Theo laugh and told myself she'd never know. I let Crabbe take the blame for the vanishing cabinet because I needed him too afraid of me to talk. Each one set and silvered under her steady witness. Each one cost him a flinch he could not hide, the muscle in his jaw, the white knuckle, the turn of the head. And each time she gave him the gift of pretending not to see the flinch, which was the only privacy left to her to give. And then one came that was not small. It rose along the inside of his left forearm, low, near the wrist, and she felt it coming and bent with the lens and read it silently, and her whole body went still. It was about her. The first time I called Granger that word, I was 11, and I did it because my father said it, and I wanted, more than I have ever wanted anything, for my father to look at me the way he looked at things he was proud of. She read it, and then she did not read it aloud, and the not reading hung in the air between them, and Draco, who could not see what the lens showed, who only knew by her stillness that this one was different, turned his head on the pillow and looked at her with the dread of a man who has heard the executioner pause. What does it say? Malfoy. What does it say, Granger? His voice cracked down the middle. It won't set if you don't read it. I can feel it. It's already turning. What does it say? And she understood that he did not know. That the curse surfaced truths buried so deep the bearer had stopped being able to see them himself, and that this thing about her, about the word he had thrown at her for 7 years, the word now carved into her arm by his own family's hand, this he did not know was inside him. She could lie. The curse would punish a lie, but she could soften it, blunt it, read him a kinder sentence than the one the lens showed. She did not. She had told him she was a true mirror, and she was, even when it cut her to be one. She read it aloud, every word, her voice not quite steady for the first time that night, and on the last word the line did not set. It flared dark and bit inward, hard, and Draco arched off the pillows with a sound torn out of him, his hand clamping over the wrist as if to hold his own heart in, and the lens swung wild on its chain, throwing light across the ceiling as Hermione lunged forward and caught him by the shoulders, and the script under her hands was burning hot, and somewhere beyond the curtain Avis was shouting for help that would not come in time. The line was biting inward, and he was arching off the bed, and the lens swung wild on its chain, and Hermione did the only thing the curse-breaker in her knew to do when a working turned violent. She stopped fighting it and asked it what it wanted. It rejected the reading, she said, fast, to herself, to him, to the magic. Her hands were on his shoulders, and the heat coming off the script scalded her palms. It set the others. Why not this one? Why? Because the others had been true and complete, she understood, the thought arriving whole. Each set line had been a truth, and its whole truth. But this one, I did it because my father said it, and I wanted him to look at me the way he looked at things he was proud of. This one was true and unfinished. It was the reason he had started. It was not the reason he had kept on. The curse had surfaced the root and demanded the whole tree, and a half-witnessed truth was worse to it than no witness at all. It's not done, she said. Malfoy, listen to me. The line isn't finished. There's more. It needs the rest of it. She gripped his jaw and turned his face toward her, because his eyes had rolled white at the edges. You started calling me that because of your father. Why did you keep calling me it years after, when he wasn't watching? Why did you keep going? I can't. You can. It's already in you. The curse can't write what isn't already written. Why did you keep going, Draco? His name in her mouth, his first name, which she had perhaps never once said aloud in her life, seemed to reach him where nothing else had. His eyes found her. The script at his wrist flared again, drawing toward the heart, and he made a sound. And then, through his teeth, with the agony of a man pulling a splinter out by the wrong end, he gave her the rest of it. Because, a gasp, because every time you beat me, every test, every class, you were a muggle-born girl with no name and no money, and nothing my father said should matter, and you were better than me at everything, and I could not bear it. And the only weapon I had that you couldn't outthink was that word, because it was the one thing about you that you couldn't change and couldn't best me on. And so I used it. I used it every time you made me feel small. I used it because you made me feel small. The line on his wrist went still. And I am sorry, he finished in a whisper, not to the curse, to her. I have never said that. I have never let myself think it long enough to say it. I am sorry, Granger. It was the only place I could reach you, and I reached for it on purpose, and I am sorry. The dark script drained to silver. The heat went out of it under her hands all at once, like a fever breaking. He sagged back against the pillows, soaked through, shaking, and Hermione realized she was shaking too, and that she had been gripping his jaw hard enough to leave marks, and she let go. For a moment there was only the sound of him breathing, ragged, and the warming charm's hum, and the lens swinging slower and slower on its chain until it hung still and threw its small coin of light on the wall. Avis had stopped shouting. She had not noticed him go quiet. When she looked, he was standing just inside the curtain, with his hand frozen halfway to his wand, having seen, she understood from his face, the whole of it. The line, the reading, the confession torn out by the root. Out, she said to him, not unkindly. I have it. Go and rest. I'll call if it turns again. He went. The curtain settled. She sat back down in the carved chair. Her hands would not quite stop trembling, so she folded them in her lap where he couldn't see, and then realized that hiding them from him, here, after that, was absurd, and unfolded them again and let them shake. You said it wouldn't pity me, Draco said hoarsely after a long while. His eyes were shut. Whatever's on your face right now, I don't want to see it, so I won't look. Consider it a courtesy. It's not pity. It never is, with you. It's worse. It's that. He stopped. His throat worked. That thing where you understand. You said you didn't want to. And then I went and handed you the whole of it anyway, gift-wrapped, because the bloody curse had its hand around my heart. A terrible thin laugh. You got it out of me by saying my name. Did you know that? 11 years I've known you. You've called me Malfoy and Ferret and Death Eater and worse, and you've never once called me Draco. And the first time you do, it's to drag a confession out of me on what I assumed was my deathbed. There's a poetry to that I'd appreciate if it didn't hurt so much. She did not know what to say, so she said the true thing, because it was the only language the room would accept anymore. I didn't plan it. It just came out when you were slipping." She looked at her shaking hands. "I think I called you by your name, because in that moment I wasn't reading a Malfoy. I was trying to keep a person from dying. There's a difference. I don't know when it stopped being the same thing to me." He opened his eyes at that, looked at her. Something passed between them in the tea-coloured light that neither of them had a name for and neither of them reached for, because reaching for it would have meant admitting it had a shape. "Tonight's over," she said abruptly, standing, because the alternative to standing was continuing to sit in that look. "It's nearly dawn. The magic slows when you sleep. Avis charted it. You should sleep. I'll be back at nightfall." "You're leaving?" "I have other patients. I have a life. I am not—" She gestured at the chair, the bed, the written length of him. "I am not yours to keep at a bedside, Malfoy. I'm a healer doing a job." "Of course." The shutters came down over his face, smooth and immediate, the aristocrat's blank. "Forgive me. Go." She got as far as the curtain. Her hand was on the cloth. "Granger." She stopped, did not turn. "The thing on your arm," he said to her back, very low. The word, my aunt's word, written in my aunt's hand on my father's floor while I stood in the doorway and did nothing. A breath. I have spent 3 years not letting myself remember that I was in the doorway. It's coming, isn't it? On the calendar of this. She heard the sheet move, imagined his hand passing over the written plane of his chest. The manner. It's a year or 2 ahead, and when it surfaces, you're going to have to read it. The day they had you on our drawing room floor, in my own writing, witnessed by you, with that word still on your arm. The silence stretched. I wanted to say it before the curse said it for me, so that one true thing at least I gave you instead of had taken. I was in the doorway. I knew it was wrong. I did nothing. Don't. Her voice came out wrong. She pressed her lips together. Don't apologize for that one yet. I'm not ready to hear it yet. Save it. The curse will tell me when it's time. She pushed through the curtain before he could answer, and she walked the hollow length of the corridor with her arms wrapped around herself, and she did not let herself feel the thing in her chest until she was alone in the lift with the gate shut. And then she pressed her marked forearm hard against her own ribs and shut her eyes and breathed. She came back at nightfall, and the night after, and the one after that. A rhythm built itself between them, the way rhythms do between 2 people forced into the same small hours. She learnt the warning signs of a surfacing line by feel now, the ozone bite, the half-second tightening of the air. And she learned the topography of his confessions, which clustered. The cruelties came in flocks. The fears came alone in the deep middle of the night. He learned that she would not lie to him, and would not flinch from him, and would not pity him. And he learned, slowly, to stop bracing for all 3, which she watched happen in his shoulders, the way you watch ice give up a river in spring. A long resistance, and then all at once. They talked in the gaps between lines. They could not help it. The silences were too large, and there was nothing in them but each other. He had a dry, vicious wit that she had only ever experienced, aimed at her and found, turned sideways and aimed at the world, unwillingly funny. She had a way of arguing a point into the ground that he had only ever experienced as humiliation, and discovered, when it wasn't aimed at him, to be the most alive thing he'd seen in 3 years of careful living. She brought him books when she saw the room had none. He pretended he hadn't asked for them. He had not asked for them. He read every one and argued with her about all of them. One night, a line surfaced over his heart, the oldest scar, the deepest seam, and it read, "I have not let anyone touch me since the war, because I cannot tell any more whether a hand on me means comfort or a wand at my throat." And she read it loud, steady, and set it. And then, without quite deciding to, she reached out and laid her palm flat against the silvered line over his heart, just for a moment, just so that the next true thing his body knew would be a hand that meant only what a hand should mean. He went rigid. She felt his heart slamming under her palm. Neither of them breathed. "That's cheating," he managed, finally not moving, as though she were a deer that would startle. "The curse can't make you do that. There's no clinical reason." "No," she agreed. Her hand stayed where it was. The cold bite of his signet ring, which he still wore even here, even now, touched the side of her wrist, where her own pulse was going far too fast. "There isn't." And she did not take her hand away, and he did not ask her to, and the lamp burned low between them while the whole written length of him lay still for once, witnessed, and the only line either of them was reading now was the one being written in the air over his heart, in no hand at all, that neither of them dared yet to say aloud. The hand over his heart was a mistake. She knew it the moment she lifted it away, knew it the way you know you have stepped wrong on a stair only after your weight has already gone down. Too late to take it back, the jolt already travelling up the spine. Because the next night he had built the wall back. She came through the curtain at dusk and found him propped upright, dressed in a clean infirmary shirt, buttoned to the throat over the written skin, hair combed, face composed into the smooth marble blankness she had not seen on him in days. The books she had brought were stacked on the side table with a precision that was its own kind of message. "These are returned. This is concluded." The carved chair had been moved back from the bed by a clear foot. "Granger." A nod. "Cool. Correct. I've spoken to Avis. I'd like to request a different healer." The static went out of the room all at once, leaving a flat, dead quiet. "There isn't a different healer," she said. "The curse won't permit one. You know that." "Then I'd like to attempt it untreated." "That's suicide. It's a choice." He met her eyes with the marble still in place. "Which, you'll recall, you informed me 3 nights ago is mine to make. I'm a patient doing a job, you're a healer doing a job, and the patient is declining further treatment. Surely there's a form." She understood. She understood it completely and instantly, the way she understood a curse the moment she stopped fighting it. He had let her put her hand on his heart. He had lain there and let it mean what it meant. And somewhere in the long day alone, he had recoiled from how much he had wanted her to leave it there. And the recoil had built this. The wall, the buttoned shirt, the chair moved back. "I will die before I let you see how much I needed that." The old Hermione would have argued him out of it with logic, marshalled the facts, won. She knew now that winning was the wrong shape. Logic was a wand, and he had spent his whole life learning to stand against wands. "All right," she said. He blinked. The marble cracked just at the edges. all right? You're a competent adult. You've declined treatment. I can't make you accept it." She picked up her bag. Her hands were perfectly steady. She made them so. "I'll note it in your file. The line that surfaces tonight will burrow unwitnessed. Avis estimates you've perhaps 4 days before one reaches the heart, depending on how deep it goes. They'll keep you comfortable. There are drafts for the pain when it gets to the heart. It does get to the heart. At the end, you'll feel it arrive. I'll make sure they're prescribed." She walked to the curtain. "That's it?" His voice had lost the marble entirely. "You're just leaving? You asked me to. He stopped. She heard the sheet move sharply, the sound of a man sitting forward against a body that didn't want to let him. "You're supposed to fight it. You're Granger. You fight everything. You don't just pick up your bag and grant a man his death because it's correct." "I fight things I can win, Malfoy." She turned at the curtain, finally, and let him see her face. And what was on it was not pity and not coldness, but something flatter and more terrible. The look of someone who has decided not to spend herself on a thing that doesn't want to be saved. "I can break a curse. I can't break a person who's decided he'd rather not be looked at. That's not curse breaking. That's just wanting something for someone who doesn't want it for themselves. And I've done a great deal of that in my life, and I'm tired of it." Her jaw set. "If you want to die, rather than let me read 3 more days of your handwriting, then die. I won't watch. I find I haven't the stomach for it after all." She made it through the curtain. She made it 4 steps down the corridor, her footsteps going hollow on the stone, and the sound of her own retreat was the loudest thing she had ever heard. Behind her, through the curtain, she heard it, the ozone bite, the tightening of the air, a line surfacing, and then a sound she had not heard from him. Not a confession, not a flinch, but a sharp, indrawn breath that climbed immediately into pain, the kind that did not stop. She stood in the corridor with her back to the room and her eyes shut. "Walk," said the part of her that was tired, that had carried the war and 3 years of its aftermath, and a word in her own arm, and was so very tired of saving people who fought the saving. He chose. Walk. The sound behind the curtain climbed higher, and then it shaped itself around the pain into a word, into her name. Granger. Not a summons, not even a request, just the word falling out of him because it was the thing his body reached for when the worst arrived, the way another man might reach for his mother. She was through the curtain before she had decided to move. He was rigid against the pillows, both hands clamped over his sternum, over the buttoned shirt, and dark script was bleeding through the white cotton. Not blood, ink, the lines surfacing so fiercely it had soaked through the cloth. And it was already turning, already biting inward, no reader to hold it. His eyes were screwed shut. He had not even seen her come back. She crossed the room and ripped the shirt open, buttons scattering, and found the line over his heart where the oldest scar ran, and bent the lens to it and read it silently, and her own breath stopped. The reason I cannot let her keep her hand on my heart is that I have wanted her hand on me for years, since long before I had any right to, and a wanting that old and that buried will kill me faster than any curse if I let her see it. So I would rather she left. I would rather I died than have her know that the thing I have hidden longest and deepest is her. She read it. She read it, and she did not move, and she did not breathe. And the whole world narrowed to the dark-soaked letters over his slamming heart, and the impossible thing they said. And he felt her go still, felt her find it, and his eyes flew open, and the horror in them was absolute, because he knew which line it was. He had felt which one was rising. That was why he had buttoned the shirt. That was why he had moved the chair. That was why he had tried to send her away to die alone, rather than be in the room when this one surfaced. "Don't read it," he gasped. "Granger, don't. I'll take it. I'll let it burrow. I'll die. Just don't. Don't say it out loud. Don't make it." "It's already turning," she said. Her voice did not sound like her own. "It's going inward. It'll reach your heart in seconds. It's the deepest one. Malfoy, it's the deepest one you have. I know. It has to be witnessed. I know, and I would rather." His hand fisted in the ruined shirt over the line, trying to physically hold it down, his knuckles white to the bone. "I would rather it killed me than have you read it and pity me. Or worse, not pity me. Or worst of all, just understand me, the way you understand everything, and put it away in that head of yours as one more fact about a Malfoy, one more thing you know, when it's the only thing I have ever. Look at me. No, look at me, Draco." He looked. The line was a hot, dark agony under his fist, seconds from the heart, and he looked at her because she had said his name again, and his body had no defense against it. And she read it aloud, every word, slow and steady, and without one tremor of recoil, because she was a true mirror, and she had promised him she would not flinch, and she did not flinch now, even as the words went into the air between them and changed everything in the room forever. She read the last of it. "The thing I have hidden longest and deepest is her." And she held his eyes, and she did not look away, and she did not pity him, and she did not file it away as one more fact. And what she let him see on her face instead was the only true witness the curse would accept. Not horror, not even surprise. Recognition. The line over his heart went still. It drained slowly from dark to silver, the deepest scar of all of them setting at last under a witness who had not turned away. And Draco Malfoy lay with his ruined shirt open and his oldest secret read aloud, and the impossible recognition on her face. And he began, silently, to weep. The way he had told her on the very first night he had wept once before, and been ashamed of the weeping, and not the mark. She set down the lens. She reached out, slowly, the way you reach for a deer, and she laid her palm flat against the new silver line over his heart, the place she had touched the night before and been recoiled from for touching. This time, he did not go rigid. This time, his hand came up and covered hers and held it there, the cold bite of his signet ring against her knuckles, his heart slamming under both their palms, and neither of them said anything at all, because there was nothing left in him that was hidden, and nothing left in her that pretended not to see it. And the silence they sat in now was a different country entirely from the silence of 3 nights before. His hand stayed over hers for a long time, and she let it, and the strangeness of that, of letting Draco Malfoy hold her hand against his bare heart in a curtained room at St. Mungo's while the lamp burned down, was a thing she examined from a great distance, as though it were happening to a woman she was reading about and not to herself. It was he who moved first, and even then only to turn his face away, the old reflex hiding the wet of his eyes. "Well," he said, when he could trust his voice, and it came out almost steady, almost the old drawl, save for the crack running under it. "Now you know. The curse has done what torture couldn't. Congratulations to it." He drew a breath. "You can take your hand back. I won't. I'm not going to read anything into it. You did your job. The line's set. You can go." She did not take her hand back. "Stop telling me to leave," she said quietly. "You've done it 3 times now. Each time you've nearly died to make me obey. I'm not going to obey. Granger. And stop saying 'now you know,' as though I've been handed some weapon." She kept her palm flat over the silver line, his heart still going too fast beneath it. "You think the worst thing that could happen tonight is that I know you've wanted me for years. You think that's the thing that leaves you exposed. A small, disbelieving breath that was nearly a laugh. Draco, I've spent 5 nights reading your body. I know the night they marked you, and you wept and were ashamed of the weeping. I know you broke Pansy's confidence and let Crab take your blame and called me that word because your father said it, and then kept calling me it because I frightened you with being better. I know things about you that your own mother doesn't. I have read you down to the foundations." She felt him flinch under the word and softened it. "I knew you were a person 3 nights ago. That you also wanted me is, honestly, the least surprising thing your skin has told me. It's almost a relief. It's the first secret you've had that wasn't a wound." He turned his head back, looked at her. The marble was entirely gone now. There was nothing left to put it back together with. "And?" His voice was very low. "You've read me down to the foundations. So, what's the verdict, healer? Now that you've got the whole text in front of you, what do you make of it?" It was the truest question he had ever asked her, and she knew it. And she knew too that a glib answer or a clinical one would do more damage than the curse had. That he had stripped himself to the last line and was now standing in the open, waiting to learn whether the witness who had read everything would stay or recoil after all, now that the staying was a choice and not a duty. She thought about lying. She thought about the safe answer. "You're my patient, this is transference, the intimacy of the situation." All the true and cowardly things she could say to put the chair back a foot. She was a true mirror. It had cost her all week to be one for him. She found she could not stop being one now, just because the truth being reflected was her own. "I make of it," she said slowly, "that I've come back to this room 5 nights running and called it work. That I told you not to mistake obligation for tenderness, and then put my hand on your heart for no clinical reason at all. That I said your name when you were dying, because in that moment you weren't a Malfoy to me, and I told you I didn't know when it had stopped being the same thing. And the truth, Draco, the truth I have been very carefully not reading in myself while I read everything in you, is that it stopped a while ago. Somewhere around the night, you drank broth out of a bowl because your hands shook too badly for a spoon and pretended you'd meant to. That's when. I just didn't have a curse forcing me to admit it." The room had gone very still. Even the warming charm's hum seemed to have hushed itself to listen. "I make of it," she went on, and her own voice was unsteady now, the true mirror trembling. That I'm a muggle-born war heroine with a slur carved into her arm by your aunt, sitting at the bedside of the boy who watched it happen, and that I should hate you, and that the hating got used up somewhere this week without my permission, and what's underneath where the hating was is... She stopped, her hand pressed very slightly against his heart. Is this, whatever this is, that I haven't a name for and am terrified to name, because naming it makes it real, and real means I have to do something about it? He stared at her. For the length of several heartbeats, she could count them under her palm. He did not move at all, as though he did not trust the moment to hold his weight. Then his free hand came up, slowly, and his fingers touched her jaw. The lightest contact, a question and not a claim. The cold edge of the signet ring grazing her cheek. And he tilted her face the half-inch needed and stopped there, holding, his eyes searching hers for the recoil he had braced against his whole life. It didn't come. Say it's real, he murmured. I can't. Granger, I have wanted one true thing for so long, and I cannot bear to reach for it and find I've misread. The curse reads me. I can't read you. I need you to say it, out loud, so that it sets the way mine had to. So I know it's witnessed, and it won't sink and vanish the moment I close my eyes. It's real, she said, and she closed the half-inch herself, because he had been made to confess everything this week, and she would not make him be the one to risk this too. She pressed her mouth to his, gently, a first kiss with the salt of his earlier tears still on it, and his breath went out of him all at once into her, and his hand slid from her jaw into her hair, and for a moment the whole written, scarred, exhausted length of him simply let go, the way a held fist aches when it finally opens. It did not last long. It did not need to. When she drew back, his eyes were shut and his forehead came to rest against hers, and he was breathing as though he'd run a great distance to arrive somewhere he'd stopped believing existed. That's cheating, he whispered, the same words as the night of the hand on his heart, but wrecked now, undone. There's no clinical reason for that one either. No, she agreed against his mouth. There isn't. They stayed like that, foreheads together, hands tangled over the silvered scar, until the lamp guttered and she had to draw back to right it, and the small, ordinary task of trimming a wick gave them both somewhere to put their hands and their eyes for a moment, which they needed. When the flames steadied, she sat back in the chair, closer than a foot now, the chair pulled in tight against the bed rail, and looked at the length of him in the new light, and something occurred to her that turned the warmth in her chest cold. Draco, she said it carefully, the line that's set tonight, the deepest one you had, over the heart. His eyes were half shut, drowsy with a relief she'd never seen on him. It was the deepest. You said so. The thing you'd hidden longest. She sat forward. But the curse is working chronologically, year by year. It's only reached your 6th year. School, the cabinet, the marking. It hasn't reached the war yet. It hasn't reached the manor. It hasn't reached whatever the deepest war truths are. Her stomach had gone to stone. So, how did the deepest secret you have surfaced now, out of order, years before the curse should have reached it? His eyes opened. The drowsy relief drained out of them. It surfaced, she said slowly, working it the way she worked a curse, the answer moving toward her and bringing dread with it. Because it had to. Because the curse needed its set before it could go on. Which means whatever's coming next, the war years, the manor, the thing under all of it, is so deep that the curse couldn't reach it while that line was still in the way. It cleared the wanting, because the wanting was lying on top of something worse. She looked at him. There's a line underneath the one we just set, isn't there? Something the wanting was covering for. Something you've buried under even that. And she watched the colour go out of his face entirely, watched his hand find the edge of the sheet and twist it white-knuckled, watched him open his mouth to deny it. And across his chest, low, beneath the fresh silver scar over his heart, the skin began, slowly, to darken with the first stroke of a new line surfacing, the deepest one yet, the one the kiss had not brought them out of after all. The new line came slowly, which was worse than fast. The shallow truths had surfaced in seconds, eager, almost grateful to be let out. This one rose the way something rises from the bottom of a deep, cold lake. Reluctant, heavy, the dark strokes forming and then stalling, forming and stalling, as though the curse itself had to drag it up against the weight of how far down he had buried it. Hermione bent the lens to it. Only the first few words had set into legibility. They made me. That was all. They made me. And then nothing, the next word half-formed and refusing. It won't surface, she said. It's stuck. Draco. It's only got the first 3 words and it stopped. He had his eyes shut and his jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jumping. Then leave it stuck. It can't stay stuck. A half-surfaced line is the worst thing for it. You saw what happened with the one about your father when it was true but unfinished. It tore inward. She kept her voice level, the healer's voice, the wall between the work and the dread. It needs to come all the way up to be read, and it won't come up. Why won't it come up? Because I can't see it. His eyes opened, and there was something in them she had not seen before, not even on the first night. Not shame, not dread, but a kind of blankness, a door with no handle. That's how the curse reads me, isn't it? It surfaces what I've buried, but the ones it surfaces are the ones I've buried where I could still find them if I dug. The wanting, the cruelties, the fear. I knew those were down there. I just kept the lid on. His hand passed over the half-formed line, not covering it now, just touching it, the way you touch a door you're afraid to open. This one I buried where I can't find it myself. I don't, Granger. I genuinely don't know what it says. They made me. Made me what? I can't. There's nothing there. There's a hole where it should be. She understood then, and the understanding was the worst thing the week had given her. You blocked it, she said quietly. Not hid it. Blocked it. Occlumency or trauma or both. You sealed it off from yourself so completely that it isn't a memory you're keeping anymore. It's a memory you've lost. And the curse can surface a thing you're hiding. It can't surface a thing you've made yourself unable to find. She sat back. It's stuck because you're stuck. The line can't come up until you can. He laughed, the dreadful, soundless one from the first night. Then we're finished, because whatever's down there, I sealed it for a reason. I sealed it because I couldn't live carrying it. And you're asking me to dig it back up and read it out loud. The one thing I made certain even I would never have to face again, or die. His knuckles were white in the sheet. "I'd take the dying. I'd genuinely take it. Except—" He stopped. "Except," she said. "Except now there's you." Flat, furious almost, at himself, at the curse, at her for existing. 5 nights ago, I'd have let it have me and counted it a mercy. And then you put your hand on my heart and read my worst secret aloud and kissed me. And now I find I want to live. After 3 years of not particularly minding either way, you've gone and made me want to live. And the price of living is the one thing I sealed off, because living through it the first time nearly." His voice cracked clean in two. He pressed the back of his wrist to his mouth and breathed until he could speak again. "It's cruel, the timing of it. To make me want to stay and then demand that as the toll." She was quiet for a moment. Outside the curtain, the building hummed its low, warming charm note, and somewhere a trolley wheel squeaked and faded down a hollow corridor. "I have a word in my arm," she said. He went still. "You know that. Everyone knows that." She rolled back the sleeve of her healer's robe, slowly, and laid her own left forearm bare in the lamplight, and there it was. Mudblood, pale and raised and permanent. Bellatrix's hand, his aunt's knife, 3 years old, and never once shown to him deliberately until this moment. "I've spent 3 years not looking at it. I wear long sleeves. I don't roll them past the elbow even in summer. When I wash, I keep my eyes on the other arm. I have made myself, on purpose, unable to see a thing that is carved into my own flesh, because looking at it means going back to the floor of your drawing room, and I sealed that off the same way you sealed yours. I don't remember most of it. I've made certain I don't." She turned the arm so the lamp caught the letters. "So, when I tell you, I know what it costs to dig up a thing you've buried where you can't find it, I'm not guessing. I'm the only other person in this room who's done it. Or rather, who hasn't done it. Who spent 3 years not doing it, the way you have." He looked at the word in her arm. He had seen it before, in the doorway when it was being made, the thing he had confessed to standing by and doing nothing about. But he had never seen it healed, never seen it as a scar she carried into rooms and meetings and her whole quiet, careful life. And something in his face came apart looking at it. "I'm sorry," he said. The same words from the doorway confession, but he was not apologizing for the curse saying it this time. "Granger, that's mine to carry too. I stood there. I'll carry it. I'm not showing you to make you carry anything." She rolled the sleeve back down, covering the word again, but slower than usual, less of a flinch in it. "I'm showing you because I'm going to make you a trade. You can't dig up your sealed line alone. I don't think anyone can dig up the deep ones alone. That's why the curse needs a witness. It's not built for solitude. So I'll go first." She met his eyes. "I'll unseal mine, the manor, the floor, what was done to me. I'll go back to the thing I've spent 3 years refusing to look at, and I'll tell you, the boy who watched, what it was actually like, the parts I've kept from myself. And you'll witness me, the way I've witnessed you all week. And then," her voice steadied, "then you'll know it can be survived, going back into the sealed room and coming out again. I'll have done it in front of you, and maybe then yours will come up, because you'll have seen that the worst thing doesn't kill you if someone's in the room when you open the door." He stared at her as though she had offered to walk into fire on his behalf, which, he understood slowly, she had. "No," he said. "No. Granger, you don't have to. That's your wound. You don't owe me. I'm not worth you reopening. It's not about worth." She pulled the carved chair close until her knees touched the side of the bed. "I've needed to unseal it for 3 years and never had a reason large enough to make myself. You're the reason. That's all. You're large enough." She took his hand, the one with the signet ring, the cold bite of it familiar now against her fingers. "I'm going to tell you what happened on your floor, and you're going to hold my hand and not look away. And we'll find out together whether the door opens both directions." She closed her eyes. She had not gone back to that room in 3 years. She went back now, deliberately, the way you walk into cold water, and she felt his hand tighten around hers as her breathing changed and she began to speak. Low, halting, the sealed details coming up one at a time. The smell of the drawing room, the chandelier overhead, his aunt's weight, and the knife and the questions, and the white-hot line of the word being carved letter by letter while she screamed. And she did not stop, and she did not let go of his hand. And Draco Malfoy lay there and witnessed it, every word, and his face was wet and his grip never loosened. And as she spoke, as she opened her own sealed door and walked into it and did not die of it, the half-formed line low on his chest gave a small lurch, and the stalled fourth word began, at last, to surface, dragged up in the wake of her courage, like a thing rising in a draught from a door opened somewhere far below. She finished. She came up out of the memory, shaking, soaked, alive, his hand crushed in hers, and she opened her eyes and saw the line on his chest, moving, growing, and she saw his face as he felt it move, felt his own sealed door beginning to give, and the terror that broke across him was the terror of a man who has just watched someone he loves prove that the unsurvivable can be survived, and now has no excuse left not to try. The line was moving now, but moving was not the same as arriving. The fourth word formed. They made me kill. And then it stalled again, shuddering, the dark strokes trembling at the edge of legibility and refusing to complete, because the door in him had cracked and was now straining against 3 years of everything he'd packed behind it. "It's coming," Hermione breathed. "Draco, it's coming. It's almost... I can feel it." His whole body had gone rigid, bowstring taut, sweat starting at his hairline. "It's... Granger. It's vast. There's so much behind it. I can feel the weight of it pushing, and I can't let it." His hands had fisted in the sheets, both of them, knuckles white to translucency. "Make it stop. Help me make it stop. I can't open it. I can't..." "You don't have to open it." She had his face in her hands now, forcing his eyes to hers. "You opened your father one by saying why. You opened your heart one by letting me read it. You don't have to dig the memory out yourself. You just have to stop holding the door shut. That's all. Stop holding it. Let it come up. I'm here. I witnessed mine, and I'm still here. Stop holding it, Draco. Let go. If I let go, I'll have done it again. I'll have to know I did it." Did what? And the door gave. It did not give the way the others had, in a clean surfacing of script. It gave the way a dam gives, all at once, with a sound that was not in the room, but in him, a sound she felt rather than heard, and the line tore the rest of the way up across his chest in a single violent stroke, the whole sentence completing at once, dark as a wound. They made me kill the muggle they brought to the manor, the woman, and I have made myself not remember her face since the night I did it, because remembering it is the thing I cannot live carrying. And the moment it completed, it bit inward, not slowly, not the burrowing creep of the other lines, but a single savage plunge straight at the heart, because it was the deepest thing in him, and the curse had been waiting 3 years' worth of his life to take it. And Draco arched off the bed with a sound that finally did reach the room, a raw, tearing cry, and his back bowed and his hands clawed at his own chest as though to dig the line out of his flesh, and the lens swung wild, and the lamp leapt, and the air went thick with ozone, and the metallic reek of magic turned violent. "Read it!" he was screaming, the words coming apart. "Read it. Set it. I let go. I let it up. Read it before it—" She read it. She had the lens on it and the words in her sight, and she read it aloud, fast, steady, every word, her voice cutting through his cries. "They made me kill the muggle they brought to the manor, the woman, and I have made myself not remember her face." And she did not flinch, she did not recoil. She read the worst thing he had ever done in the flattest, truest mirror she had ever made of herself. And the line did not set. It kept biting inward. It reached the silver scar over his heart, the one they'd set the night before, and went through it, deeper, and Draco's cry choked off into something far more frightening, a wet silence, his eyes rolling back, his clawing hands going slack. "No." She dropped the lens. "No. Why isn't it? I read it. I witnessed it. Why isn't it setting?" She had her hands on his chest, over his heart, and she could feel it under her palms, the line driving in, and his heart beneath it stuttering, missing, catching, missing. "Draco, Draco, stay with me. Why won't it set? What's different? What's—" And she understood, the answer arriving the way they all did, too late and too whole. The other lines had set when she witnessed them, but this one wasn't asking for her witness. It had been buried so deep that even she, even a true mirror, wasn't enough, because the one person who had refused to witness it for 3 years with all the force of his sealed and shuttered will was him. He had made himself unable to see the woman's face. He had refused to be the witness of his own act, and no outside witness, however true, could set a truth its bearer would not look at himself. "You have to read it," she said. She took his slack face in her bloodless hands. "Draco, it won't set because I'm not the witness it needs. You are. You've spent 3 years refusing to remember her. The curse can't close a truth you still won't look at. You have to look. You have to remember her face. You have to be the one who witnesses what you did, not me. You—" "I can't." It came out of him barely a breath, his heart faltering under her hands. "If I see her face, I'll never—" "You'll survive it. I survived mine. I went back to your floor tonight, and I came out the other side, and I'm holding your hand, and I'm here. I'm here. You can go back into that room and come out again. I'll be in the room with you. You won't be alone in it. You were alone in it for 3 years, and that's why it's killing you. You were alone." She pressed her forehead to his, both hands on his face, his failing heart between them. "Let me in. Look at her. With me here. Now. Look at her, Draco. I'm not going anywhere. Look at her face and tell me what you see." For one terrible suspended moment, nothing happened. His heart stuttered toward stillness. The line drove toward its center. She felt him at the very edge of letting go entirely, of choosing the dark over the door. And then his hand came up and gripped her wrist, hard, an anchor, and his eyes opened. And they were not blank anymore. They were full, brimming, seeing. And he looked, at last, at the thing he had sealed away, with her forehead against his and her hands on his face, and he began to speak. "She had grey in her hair," he said, wrecked, shaking, the words dragged up from 3 years down. "She was older than my mother. She had a cardigan, a muggle cardigan, blue, with a button missing, and she kept her chin up the whole time. She wouldn't beg. She looked at me. She looked right at me. When they put the wand in my hand and told me, she looked at me, and she said, it's all right. You're only a boy. It's all right. She forgave me, Granger. She forgave me before and I did it anyway because I was too afraid not to. And her face when the light... I've spent 3 years making myself not see her face, because her face was kind. She was kind to me in the last second of her life. And I killed her. And I could carry the murder. I could almost carry the murder. But I could not carry the kindness. And he wept openly, his whole body shaking with it, 3 years of sealed grief tearing out of him at once. And as he wept, as he finally witnessed her, finally looked at the face he had refused to keep, the line over his heart shuddered to a halt. It stopped its inward drive. It hung, dark, at the very edge of his heart. And then, slowly, slowly, as he kept speaking, kept seeing her, kept being the witness he had refused to be, it began to lift back out, to rise, the dark draining stroke by stroke into silver, the deepest wound in him setting at last under the only witness that could ever have closed it. His own honest eyes, with hers beside them. His heart beneath her hands, caught, steadied, beat. He sagged into the pillows, hollowed, emptied, alive. And Hermione gathered him up. There was no decision in it. She simply gathered him against her, his face in her neck, his whole shaking frame in her arms, and held him while he wept the last of it out. And she did not tell him it was all right, because it was not all right, and never would be. A woman was dead, and his hand had done it, and lies were the one thing the room had never permitted between them. What she said instead, into his hair, was the only true thing large enough for the moment. "She forgave you," she whispered. "You couldn't carry it because you wouldn't let yourself be forgiven. So carry that instead. She forgave you, and now you have to do the impossible thing she gave you and let it be true." Her arms tightened. "And I'm here. I read all of it. The worst of you, the whole text down to the bottom. And I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. And that's not the curse making me stay. There's no clinical reason for any of this. I'm staying because I choose to. Do you hear me? I'm choosing you with the whole of it read." And against her neck, broken and emptied and witnessed at last, she felt him nod, and felt his arms come up around her at last and hold. And the two of them stayed locked together in the tea-coloured light, while the last silver line settled cool and closed across his quiet, beating heart. He slept after that. Truly slept. For the first time in the week she had known him, the bottomless sleep of a body that has finally set down a thing it has carried so long, the carrying had become its posture. She did not leave. She sat in the carved chair with his hand in hers and watched the silver lines on his chest in the lamplight, all of them set now, a whole life turned to scar, and she watched his heart move under the quiet skin, and somewhere near dawn she slept too, her head on the edge of the bed beside their joined hands. She woke to grey light at the high window and the warming charm's hum, and the realization that he was awake and had been for some time, watching her with an expression she had no defense against, open, undefended, the face of a man with nothing left hidden anywhere in him. "You stayed," he said. "I told you I would." People say a great many things at 3 a.m. over a man they think is dying. He turned her hand over in his, studying it, the cold bite of his signet ring catching the grey light. "I didn't expect it to survive daylight. Most things don't." She sat up, stiff, and did not let go of his hand. "It's daylight. I'm still here. Update your expectations." A breath of something that was almost his old amusement crossed his face and then faded into the new, naked thing underneath. He was quiet for a moment. "It's done," he said. "Isn't it? The curse. They've all set. I can't feel anything moving anymore. There's nothing left down there for it to find. You've read all of it. Every line." He looked at the silvered length of himself, the whole written record of his life turned harmless. 3 years I spent making sure no living soul would ever know the half of what's on me. And now there's one woman alive who knows the whole of it. All of it. The worst of it. His eyes came back to her. "How does that not horrify you?" "I've been lying here trying to work out how it doesn't horrify you, and I can't." She considered the question honestly, the way the room had taught her to consider everything. "Because horror is what you feel about a thing you can't fit into the shape of a person," she said slowly. "A monster, a villain, something flat. And I can't make you flat anymore, Draco. That's what the reading did. I know why you called me that word, and I know you wept the night they marked you, and I know you killed a woman who forgave you and couldn't carry the forgiveness. None of those things fit together into a monster. They fit together into a person, a frightened, cruel, grieving, complicated person who did terrible things and is not the same as the terrible things he did." She pressed his hand. "I can't be horrified by a person. I can only know him, and know that knowing him hasn't made me want to leave, which frankly surprised me too. But there it is. The text's been read, and I'm still in the chair." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, very low, "There's one more line." Her stomach dropped. "You said it was finished. It is. The curse is finished. This isn't the curse." He drew a breath, and she watched him gather himself the way she had watched him gather himself before every confession, except this time there was no magic forcing it, no line burrowing toward his heart. This time he was choosing to bear a thing of his own free will, which he understood was the harder thing by far. There's a line that's never going to surface on its own, because it isn't a secret I've buried. It's one I've just never said. I've been waiting all night for the courage to say it, without a curse holding a wand to me, so that you'd know it was mine. Given, not taken. His thumb moved over her knuckles. "The deepest thing on my body was the woman's face. But the deepest thing in me isn't on my body at all, because it only started this week, and the curse stopped writing before it could reach it. He looked at her. I love you. That's the line. That's the one I'm choosing to read to you myself, with no magic making me, in plain daylight, knowing you've read the worst of me, and stayed. I love you, Granger. I have no idea what to do about it, and I've nothing to offer that isn't covered in scars. But I wasn't going to let the one true thing I've ever wanted to say be the one thing I left unsaid. The room held very still. And then Hermione did the thing she had been not doing all week, the thing she had told him on the first night would embarrass them both. She let her face show, fully and without managing it, what was underneath. Not the true mirror's flat steadiness, just her, unguarded the way he was unguarded. You realize, she said, and her voice was not steady at all now, that I'm the worst possible person for you. A muggle born, the girl your family, the girl in your aunt's handwriting, every name you were raised to hate, wrapped up in one person sitting at your bedside. If your father could see this. My father, Draco said, is in Azkaban, and the last useful thing he did for me was leave so much empty space behind him that I finally had room to find out who I am without him. And it turns out, who I am is a man in love with the cleverest, most stubborn, most unbearably good woman in Britain, who read every terrible thing I've ever done and is still holding my hand. His own voice cracked. So, with respect to my father's opinions on bloodlines, he can rot where he is. I've spent enough of my life letting that man choose what I'm allowed to want. She laughed, a wet, broken, astonished laugh. And she leaned in, and this time the kiss was not a first kiss given to spare him the risk, and it was not the salt and tears kiss of a man undone. This time it was a thing freely chosen by both of them in daylight, slow and certain, his hand sliding into her hair and hers flat against the silvered scars over his heart, and his heart beat steady and whole under her palm, and the written record of the worst of him lay quiet beneath her hand, while the best of him kissed her back. When she finally drew away, she stayed close, her forehead against his, and she said the line back to him, because he had given her his, and she would not let him hold the whole risk alone. He had been made to do that his entire life, and she would not do it to him now. I love you too, she said. There, witnessed. It's set. It won't sink and vanish when you close your eyes. You can stop bracing for me to leave. He let out a breath that seemed to come from 3 years down, and he pulled her in and held her. And for a long while, in the grey dawn light, neither of them said anything at all, because the silence between them now was not the silence of things hidden, but the deep, easy quiet of two people with nothing left to hide from each other. A knock came at the antechamber, Avis's voice, hesitant. Healer Granger, the morning rounds, and the board wants a report on the patient's status. They're asking whether the curse is... Tell them, Hermione called, without lifting her head from Draco's shoulder, that the patient is cured, every line set, no further treatment required. A pause, then softer, just for the man in her arms. The reading's done. There's nothing left in him that's hidden. He's been seen all the way to the bottom and survived it. She drew back enough to look at him, at the grey eyes that had stopped, finally flinching from being looked at, which is, I'm told, the only thing any of us are really afraid of, being seen all the way down and finding out we're loved there anyway. Draco looked at her, looked and did not turn away and let himself be looked at, and the last frightened thing in him went quiet at last. "Stay," he said. Not a command, not the desperate sending away that had really meant I can't bear to want you. Just the true word, finally, the one underneath all the others. Not as a healer, not because of the curse, just stay. And Hermione Granger, who had read him down to the foundations and found a person there worth loving, settled back into the carved chair with his hand in hers, and the morning coming up grey and clean through the high window, and answered him. "I'll stay," she said, and she did. Not all at once, and not the way the storybooks would have it. There was no clean cut from the curtained room to a happy ending, because two people written on by the wall do not simply walk out of it whole. But she stayed, and staying turned out to be a thing made of small ordinary mornings rather than one grand gesture, and that, she would come to understand, was the whole point. He was discharged on a Tuesday, 11 days after the night the owl had come. He walked out of St. Mungo's under his own strength for the first time in 3 years, not carrying a single hidden thing. And the strangeness of that, of having nothing left to brace against being known, made him so quiet on the steps outside that she thought for a moment the daylight had frightened him. "All right?" she asked. "I don't know what to do with my hands," he said, which made no sense and made perfect sense. And she took one of them in hers, and that, it turned out, was what to do with them. The healing of him was slow, and so was the healing of her, and they did it alongside each other rather than for each other, which she insisted on, and he came, eventually, to be grateful for. She did not fix him. She had spent a great deal of her life trying to fix people, and had learned, in the carved chair beside his bed, that you cannot fix a person. You can only witness them and stay, and that the staying is the thing that lets them fix themselves. He went to see the woman's family. It took him 4 months to find the courage, and a 5th to find the family. A Muggle daughter in Bristol who had spent 6 years not knowing what had become of her mother, only that she had vanished in the strange dark spring when so many people vanished. He could not tell her everything. There were laws, and there was mercy, and some of the truth would only have been cruelty handed across a kitchen table. But he told her that her mother had been brave at the end, and kind, and unafraid, and that her last act had been to comfort a frightened boy who did not deserve it. And he watched the daughter weep, and he did not look away, because he had learned in a curtained room that the not looking away was the only true gift he had to give. He came home grey and hollowed and lighter, and Hermione held him through the night and asked nothing. And in the morning he ate breakfast as though it were a perfectly ordinary thing for him to be alive and at her table, which it was now, which it had somehow become. Her own arm changed too, though slower. She stopped wearing long sleeves in summer. The first time she rolled them past the elbow at the ministry, someone's eyes went to the word, and away, fast, embarrassed, and she felt the old urge to cover it, and did not. And Draco, who had come to meet her for lunch, who was learning to walk into the world as a man who loved a Muggle-born woman, and would not pretend otherwise, saw the moment, and crossed the atrium, and took her bared forearm gently in both hands in front of everyone, and pressed his mouth to the word his aunt had carved there, once, deliberately, in the full light of the public hall. "That's mine to carry too," he said quietly, only to her. "I told you that in the room. I meant it out here." She did not cry in the ministry atrium. She came very close. The word on her arm did not vanish. Scars don't. But something about the weight of it shifted that day, from a thing done to her in solitude to a thing two people now carried between them, and a weight shared is a different weight entirely. They did not announce it. They simply began to appear together and let the world adjust around the fact of them, which the world did, slowly, with much muttering, and they found they did not particularly care about the muttering, having both already survived the worst thing a person can survive, which is being fully known. After that, gossip was a small wether. It was nearly a year after the night of the owl that she found him one evening, in the long light of midsummer, standing shirtless at the window of the cottage they had, by then, and without ever quite deciding to, begun to share, standing in the gold light, looking down at himself, at the silver lines that mapped his whole life across his chest and ribs and arms. She came and stood behind him, and put her arms around him, and laid her cheek between his shoulder blades, where there was writing too. "I used to think," he said, "that if anyone ever read all of it, I'd want to die." That being known down to the bottom was the same as being destroyed. His hand came up and covered hers where they crossed over his heart. "And then, you read all of it, every line, and I didn't die. I just became real. I'd been a secret for so long I'd forgotten I was a person. You read me into being a person again." "The curse did that," she said into his back. "No." He turned in her arms so he could look at her, and the silver script caught the gold light, no longer something to hide, but simply the texture of him, the record of where he'd been. The curse forced the words out. "You're the one who stayed in the chair. Anyone can read a confession. You witnessed me. There's a difference. You taught me there's a difference." His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "I love you. I'll likely say it badly, and not often enough, and I'll have nights where the woman's face comes back, and I go silent, and you'll have to wait me out. But I'll never hide a single thing from you again. I haven't the strength left to hide things, and I find I don't want it. You've ruined me for hiding." "Good," she said. "I'm a terrible liar anyway. I'd have caught you." He laughed, the real one, the one she'd worked a year to earn, that had nothing of the dreadful, soundless thing from the first night in it. And he kissed her in the gold midsummer light, slow and certain and unhurried, a man with all the time in the world and nothing left to fear from being seen. And later, much later, in the deep blue quiet of the night, with the window open and the smell of cut grass coming in, and her head on his chest over the silvered scars, she traced the lines of his life with one fingertip in the dark. The night he was marked, the cruelties, the heart, the woman with grey in her hair. And she did not read them aloud, because they were set now, harmless, his to keep and no longer his to hide. They were just his skin, just the map of where he'd been, leading, line by line, to here. "What does your body say?" she asked him softly, half asleep. An old question worn smooth into a private joke between them now. The thing she'd come to ask on the bad nights and the good ones. And Draco Malfoy, who had once spent every resource of his life ensuring no one would ever read the truth written on him, who had been forced to bear it line by line and had survived the bearing and been loved at the bottom of it, pressed his lips to her hair in the dark and gave her the only answer that was true anymore, the answer that a curse could never have forced from him, the one he gave freely every night, because giving it freely was the whole of what he had learned. "It says, 'I'm yours,'" he murmured. "All of it, every line, read and witnessed and stayed for. There's nothing left on me that isn't yours." His arms tightened around her in the dark. "And for the first time in my life, there's nothing on me I'm afraid for you to read." She smiled against his chest, over the quiet, steady beating of his heart, and she closed her eyes, and outside the open window, the midsummer night breathed warm and green over two people the war had written on, who had stopped, at last, being its text, and become, together, the authors of whatever came next. And what came next was ordinary and long and theirs, which was, after everything, the happiest ending either of them had ever dared to want.
So that's the story. Thank you for staying until the end. I want to tell you why I wrote it. I think we all hide things, small things, big things. We carry them quietly. We think if anyone saw the worst of us, they would leave. That's the fear at the heart of the story. Draco spends his whole life hiding. He is sure that if someone reads the truth, he will be destroyed. And then Hermione reads all of it, every line, the worst of it, and she stays. There is a moment I keep thinking about. She tells him, "I can't be horrified by a person, I can only know him." For me, that is the whole story in one line, because being known is scary, but it also the only way to be loved for real, not loved for the mask, loved for the truth underneath. I wrote this for anyone who feels like their scars make them unlovable. They don't. The right person reads all of it and stays in the chair. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. If this story touched you, leave a comment, tell me one line you remember. I read them all. Take care of yourself and let someone see you all the way down. See you in the next story.